Welcome to the LegalTube podcast, presented by LawyerLocate.ca. Join us as we explore the latest trends, strategies, and tools for promoting your legal practice in the digital age. Hosted by Mark Robbins, CEO of LawyerLocate.ca, LegalTube, and Digital MSpace, where we're all about legal marketing online for Canadian lawyers. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Mark Robbins, your host, LegalTube.ca, the podcast, and I am super excited, super jacked to have as our guest today, Mr. Danny Brown, who I've known. We were just discussing in the green room that I think we go back more than 10 years, and it's really great to have him here. Danny, how are you? It's good to see you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm very good, Mark. And yeah, 2012, mate. That's when we first met. That seems a lifetime ago, with all the stuff that's happened since then. So my name's Danny Brown. I'm what you would call a serial podcaster. I've got way too many podcasts I've started and archived and continue to grow, etc. since I first published an episode. Love the space, love the medium, which is, good because I work in the industry. I'm the head of podcaster support and experience at Captivate, which is a hosting, distribution, analytics, and monetization platform.
Excellent. So one of the things that, going back a little bit with you and I, is that you've been all over the place in marketing. You've done certain vertical marketing. I remember you used to do, and I can't remember the company, so you'll have to help me with our, you had a very dear friend. Why am I blanking on his name? Yellow Bench.
Sam Fiorello.
Sam Fiorello, yes. And you guys used to do a show, and I loved it because I'm a beer drinker, and we did some beer things too, and social media. Was you used to do this show with, and you would do the show on marketing, but you'd also review beers, which I thought was a great concept.
Well, it fed our love of craft beer. Sam's a big craft beer drinker. I'm a big craft beer drinker. And yeah, Marketing on Tap, that was back in 2018, 2017,
Right.
2018, we probably had that show. So yeah, we talk about various news articles that popped up in the marketing space, but we do it with a craft beer. So we review the beer, and it'd always be like a local Canadian craft beer. Now and again, we'd get an American one in, but generally we try to support Canadian craft industry.
Right. Yeah, that's where I live in Alberta. Alberta is huge for craft beers. I mean, I'm blown away, probably because it's mainly privatized, so they don't have the restrictions that you get in Ontario with the Brewers Retail trying to control everything. But yeah, it's like even where I live in my town, there's 7 craft brewers, 4 craft wine, vodka, and gin companies, and they're all thriving. And they all, the beauty of that is they all support each other. And it's a great thing to watch how that magic comes together. Now, back to you, Danny. You also have this really, what I think is a really great podcast, the 1 Minute Podcast. And my take on it is it's a podcast to help people like me, because we're relatively new being on this side of the camera. We're not new being on the production side. We've been doing it for 10 years now. So we were really early in our space, in the legal marketing space, to be doing live streaming shows. So I do watch your 1 Minute Podcast, and I've actually learned a lot, and you helped me today with some adjustments for my audio, and which is great. So what was the impetus to create that show? Yeah,
so I mean, it was a couple of things. Because I'm a podcaster myself, I'm fairly frequent on Reddit. I'm in a lot of Reddit subthreads and subreddits, in the podcasting subreddits anyway. And you always see a lot of questions come across. And because of my role at Captivate, and because of the length of time of being a podcaster, etc., the advice being given wasn't always the right stuff. Well-intentioned advice, but not the right stuff. So taking people down the wrong path. Then you've got the podcast that, yourself, people have got a finite amount of time, and you don't always have an hour, 90 minutes or whatever to listen to a podcast tips episode or show to get the information you're looking for. So I thought, what if I condensed it into 1 minute? So try go for a really niche approach. So condense every tip into 1 minute or less, sometimes a little bit more, but try not to be, and just focus on that. There's no fluff, there's no major long intro, there's no long outro. It's into the episode, talk about the tip and out. And it talks about everything. So obviously production, recording, editing, marketing, all the cool stuff that you get in podcasting. And it's been really well received because it is different. It's very, as you say, it's very granular about being a tip in 1 minute or less.
Right.
So I think because of that's helped it stand out a bit.
Now, another thing that I'm going to point out to the viewers, and it'll be in the lower third, you'll see the links to Danny's websites, his YouTube channel, which I believe your YouTube channel is your main source, Danny, or if I got that right?
It's not. No, I'm not a
Oh,
big
okay.
video. No worries.
No.
I'm not. I dabble in video now and again, but I'm not a huge fan of it. Not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of me in video. I
Oh,
don't
it's
feel comfortable around the medium. I love what you guys do, but I feel
right,
more comfortable in audio only.
right.
So like DannyPod.com, that would be where you'd see all the podcasts that I've done and the 1
Okay.
minute tips, etc.
And one of the things I know you put out there, and that's why I mentioned, because I know it's on your YouTube channel, was you have that equipment list, which I thought that's invaluable, because if any of you've all done this, we've all done this when we're starting out. You start to Google or you go to Amazon and you're all over the map saying, well, what's the best mic, cost effective mic? What's the beauty of what you did is you put it all there. It's straightforward. It makes sense, and people can check, because you included the links to all of the hardware that you would put in there, which I thought was really valuable. So anybody that's out there that's talking about starting your own podcast, or you've been doing it for a while, you're not sure, do check out Danny's channels, because he can help you a ton, and there's no money involved.
That is true, unless you click and buy it. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's no money involved. Exactly. Yeah.
Excellent. So with Captivate now, you started to touch on what you guys do there. So maybe expand a little bit more on it, and how, maybe I'll give you an example, like what you're familiar with Lawyer Locate from years gone by, are one of our companies, our parent company, that's a Canadian online legal referral service and directory. How would Captivate help Lawyer Locate improve their market position?
So I mean, it really comes down, I guess, to what Lawyer Locate's goal would be. Is it to grow referrals from a podcast back to the business? Is it to connect with potential leads as lawyers to use Lawyer Locate, or for clients to find lawyers, I should say? So what you could do is Captivate. We have a bunch of features. The way Captivate approaches things, we only want to work with serious podcasters, so we don't have a free plan. We feel there's nothing wrong with free whatsoever. And I started off with a free plan, nothing wrong with it. But we only want to work with serious podcasters that are know that it takes time and marketing and effort to grow your podcast, but then to use the tools effectively. So we create tools to help you do that, and the tools are to either save you time in production, save you money because you don't have to use third-party tools. They're all included in Captivate's dashboard, or to help you grow, whether that's grow your business, leads, marketing, podcast, whatever that looks like. So the tools we'd recommend you using is stuff like obviously guest booking. That would help you, get guests onto the shows.
Right.
Use your dynamic content. So we have a dynamic insertion engine called Amy, and that allows you to dynamically insert sponsor ads, internal messages, internal trailers, promos, etc. And you could tailor that to different audiences. So if you were, let's say you were embedding episodes on your Lawyer Locate website and you wanted to attract a certain client for a certain type of lawyer, what that looks like. Is it legal? Is it employment? Is it XYZ? So you could insert a dynamic piece of content across all the same episodes, but for the episodes that you want to target employment lawyers and connect clients with those, the dynamic content we talk to that. The embed on the employment law would have a different piece of dynamic content. So we really make it simple for you to really tailor your content specifically for the kind of audience you're going for, and then tracking that. So if you use that insertion piece of content, we will track anytime someone types that address call to action into a browser tab or clicks a link in your show notes, and we'll tell you which are the most effective. Is it your audio call to action? Is it the one in your show notes? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, not to trip you up, but to throw a curveball at you, you started with saying, what are you trying to attract? Lawyer Locate, we're 24 years old now, created by Natalie Waddell, my life partner, but she came out of this by doing an old school entrepreneur trick. Was, I see a niche that's not being filled. She was going through a divorce. You don't talk to your family, you don't talk to your friends, because that's never a good thing to get help. She didn't have a lawyer. She looked at the Law Society's referral system, which at that time, and it's not much better now, was you were not getting quality lawyers at all, and they were just kind of going through the motions. So she created this. And I remember the first article was written about Lawyer Locate by Lawyers Weekly, She identified, says basically what we're trying to do at Lawyer Locate is to be a dating service for clients and lawyers. We try to make the best match for
Mhm.
you. So with Lawyer Locate's platform, we don't charge the public for the referrals or to come to the site to search, whatever. The website's evolved to being very, very robust. It's basically a mini website for each of our members. But when you come to advertising and marketing, and this goes way back to when I got involved with it, you had to find a way to market to both lawyers and public without being overt. Because if I did like taglines like Lawyer Locate, this to a Lawyer Locate working to increase your billable hours, well, that would offend the general public because they're thinking, oh, great, I do this all the time. Make a gesture and I get balloons. And then the other side would be, Lawyer Locate working to make your legal connection. So that was more the generic one that we felt would send the message better. But when we were advertising, like I did probably 6 years on CHCH TV, and we bought into Final Round Golf Sundays, and the famous story of Lawyer Locate we just had the closed captioning ads brought to you by
Mhm.
LawyerLocate.ca, working to make your legal connections. I don't know if anybody are you a golfer, Danny? You must be. You're Scottish.
You know what? I used to be, and then I had a bad hand accident that
Oh, okay.
really impacted how I could grip it and the bounce back, etc. So not as much these days, unfortunately.
Well, there was a Canadian Open, I think it was the last Canadian Open that Tiger Woods showed up at, and there was a famous shot. It's been around. It's, it keeps coming up on all the greatest moments in golf time. It was a shot over a water hazard that nobody thought he could make, and he made it within like inches of the green or inches of the hole. And just as they froze that, our ads above his head. So that thing got replayed 100 times. Monday morning, my phone didn't stop ringing from friends, family, business associates. Did you know? Did you see? Did you see? Did you see? That ad cost me $9.50.
Oof.
So the point of the story is I remember that when I was first approached by the general manager, he was a neighbor, and when I lived in Parkdale in Toronto, and he said, "Hey, you ever thought of television advertising?" So this is a brand new company. We don't have that kind of. Oh, no, no, no. And it didn't take them long once we went through everything, the demographics, to show me that, hey, there was some big value, big bang for bucks. But
Mhm.
it was finding a way to target both the lawyers and the general public. So we've always geared towards putting the emphasis on the general public and hoping lawyers would say, hey, these guys are attracting clients. Maybe we would pay attention to what they're doing. And so far that has paid off. But there is two streams that we have to do. And now I don't know how you do social media. I know that. Do you use much social media for business, or is it more just personal stuff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Captivate has a presence on social media, like usual places, Twitter, Facebook, private groups,
Right.
a YouTube channel, etc. So we do use that, and it's mainly for educational resources and connecting with our community and giving updates, etc. For my own use, I just have it for personal. I don't really do anything from a business point of view, and I pretty much just use Twitter, mate. That's me.
Yeah.
I have some other options going like Instagram, etc. But I don't. I find social gets harder to be part of these days. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, everything out there right now these days. It's,
Mhm.
not going into politics, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a different world. It's changed a lot since the pandemic, and not necessarily for the good. I think we would probably agree on that. But I know that you have social media, and I know you're very adept at using it when you're communicating with Jeannie, our friend Jeannie. So we'll we'll leave it at that. Um,
Yeah.
you know, this market, Danny, I know you have some knowledge about the legal market in Canada, certainly from a marketing perspective. We've always been challenged, and I find not just us, but most people in this space that are doing marketing, advertising, or straight up sales for on behalf of individual lawyers or law firms. It does get challenging. And the one thing that I know, and I want to get your opinion on this, Natalie identified after the pandemic was pretty much over, she really noticed a marked change on how the public was searching for lawyers in Canada. And she said it went from where they were really gravitating to a Lawyer Locate type directory that was more robust than just a listing that you could have interaction, you could get a
Mhm.
referral, to doing their own searches because you had 2 years or 3 years sitting in your house and you had nothing else to do. So your face was in front of that screen and you learned how to find stuff. before you were lazy, right? We were all lazy. So it was like, oh, this lawyer locate place will help me. So we've been trying to figure out how you change to adapt to that, and get people to still come to Lawyer Locate and look at it, and the same as, or to come to my clients, where we're representing clients, where we're doing their websites, we're doing all their social media, we're doing shows like this. It's trying to understand the change in the viewing audience. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to it's basic marketing 101, which I know you know for years maybe. It's understanding where your audience is and what the behavior is, and now how do you adapt? So, I mean, you mentioned, obviously podcasting, and video as well is a great resource for educational purposes, but also as business generation, lead generation. And if you've got people that are now searching, for very specific terms and results and information, and they're doing that more on their own as opposed to previously with a lawyer locating, but looking to swing that pendulum a bit. Then what are they doing? Are they listening to podcasts about the terms, the legal stuff that they're interested in? Are they watching videos on YouTube? And if that's the case, do you have opportunities now to guest on podcasts that these people are listening to, or videos, video channels that these people are watching? Do you have opportunities to do promotional trailer swaps, for example? So if you have a podcast for Lawyer Locate or LegalTube, etc., and you're trying to get users or customers of the public to come, as well as lawyers, but let's say the public at the moment, to connect with these lawyers, then can you create a little trailer, create a bunch of trailers for Lawyer Locate that talks to different avenues of the legal system, and then look for podcasts in these niches and ask about trailer swaps, guests, and etc. So there's a whole bunch of stuff where you're doing more organic marketing and more
Right.
almost like guerrilla, going back to guerrilla marketing, where you're getting into the weeds and meeting people, head on there, I would say.
Right. That's dynamite advice, Danny. That really is. You said a lot in a nutshell. As you can see, my other partner has decided he wants to make himself heard. I don't know. Hopefully it's not too overwhelming. My dog, somebody's dropped something at the front door, so he's decided he wants to let everybody know that that's happening. This is the one downside of in-home studios, is you can't, I've never want perfection. When I first started into doing streaming videos, that was about 10, 12 years ago with a family law lawyer. And we created a show called Ask Andrew. And at the time in Canada, it was the first any type of streaming live show where people could ask questions. They could, text them in. And we started doing that. And one of the things he was, this particular lawyer was very, straight, and everything's got to be proper. Says, well, where's my script? Where's my teleprompter? I said, there ain't no script. There's no teleprompter. Well, oh no, I said, nobody wants to watch you on CBC. Okay. If they wanted to watch you on CBC, they wouldn't tune into this show. So I want you to be yourself. And the hardest thing I had to do with him and with every other lawyer that we ever produced a show for, with the exception of one, they pushed back so hard, push back until I showed them what the result was going to be. And then you had the same thing that was going on 10, 15 or 10, 12 years ago. Everybody wanted to see, well, how many viewers, how many clicks? So one of his shows, and it was an accident, somebody that we had hired was helping us with doing some of the SEO, made an error. And anyway, he got 100,000 views of this one show. Well, of course, drill down the views. The 100,000 views were South America. And like he says, so what do you care? I said, no, I'd rather see 10 views from Markham, where your office is, than 100,000 views from China that doesn't translate into clients. The reason we're doing this shows, and the reason most everybody does shows, whether it's podcasts, live streams, recorded shows, whatever, there's got to be a monetary thing attached to it. Like, we're not doing this for the joy of seeing ourselves on camera. We're doing it in some way, either to monetize or direct traffic to something that we believe in that will ultimately monetize. In our case, it's directing traffic to our three companies with LegalTube, Lawyer Locate, and Digital M Space. That's the whole purpose of this. Plus, I get the opportunity to meet and re-engage with people like you, Danny, like Jeannie, and our other guests. So in my mind, Danny, there's a lot more to the way the marketing landscape has changed. And I do agree with you. The comment about guerrilla marketing, I totally see that. But you have to be of a certain generation to understand what guerrilla marketing is, because a lot of people, a lot of the younger content creators, if you pose that to them, I don't think
Mhm.
they'd necessarily get it. I don't think they get that. Oh, this is about making connections, building on those
Mhm.
connections, expanding on those connections.
Yeah, and it's like that's like you say, you use the language of your audience as well, right? So if it's an older generation like us, and we're talking about guerrilla marketing, great. But if it's not, if it's like a giant, I'm not even sure what the age group would be, Gen Z,
I
senior. I'm not sure.
I lose track of the numbers.
I do, yeah. I've no idea. I apologize to anybody looking at this and saying, no, that's not Gen Z. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you speak to the language of your audience, and if they
right,
understand a certain phrase, like I've got kids, 12 and 14-year-old, and some of the
right.
stuff they talk about with their friends, I'm thinking, what are you saying? But I'm sure my parents said the exact same thing
Yeah.
about me. So it just changes and you adapt to that, right?
Yeah, we're going through it. You know, you may not remember this. I have a 44-year-old son who's, often doing his life. He actually is up in the Northwest Territories. He's working up there as a head chef, executive chef. And then I have my soon-to-be 18-year-old who just graduated high school or is graduating next week in Canmore. And when I see some of the stuff, like one of the funny things that happened to us, and I'll share this, it's very great, Angel. So Brogan normally would get his hair cut, like on a regular basis, like to keep himself neat and trim. And all of a sudden, the last 3 months or 6 months, no, I'm not. So he grew his hair out, and he's one of those kids, unfortunately, has that curly, floppy,
Mhm.
unkept. Okay. So I started to get annoyed. And he rightfully so pointed out to me, when I said, well, wait a second, Dad. You come from a generation where you had your hair long and your parents hated it, and you were always you've told me stories about what it was like with grandpa, and that he would get very upset. And I said, okay. And he says, Dad, next time you pick me up at high school, just look at the kids coming out. And sure enough,
Mhm.
they're all wearing their hair unkept, super long. So it's you, like when you say the different generations, there's stuff that we're doing with our marketing online that my son sees it and he's appalled. He's like, oh
Mhm.
my God, Dad, that's terrible. I said, but why is it terrible? I said, because we're not talking about a topic that you like or that you're interested in. Well, yeah, basically that's it. I said, but you're not my target audience.
Yeah,
And then he called me out again. He says, well, wait a minute. I wouldn't need a lawyer one day. I was
that's
like,
true.
and so we're trying to, as I'm talking about this, we're trying to scramble to say, hey, we've got to really broaden more of our range on how we're doing this, which is part of why we dove in pretty deeply into like a lot of like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Reels, because that seems to be the over between I would say between 16 and 40, that seems to be the home where everybody's living on that. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on TikTok?
It's interesting. I've got an account there. I think I've maybe posted 5 little ticks or talks or whatever they're called, which is
Yeah, yeah.
showing my old man ignorance there. But yeah, I mean, I see the value of it. My daughter's got a TikTok. She's a competitive cheerleader. So
Oh,
she goes
nice.
to a lot of competitions and that, and that's a huge industry. I was surprised at how big that is. But all her friends, the cheer teams, all that upload to TikTok, and it's amazing to watch it. Um, I think it's a great avenue as an awareness avenue. I know one of the guests, we have a show, Mark Asquith, who's the co-founder of Captivate. He and I co-host a show called In and Around Podcast, and it talks about the podcasting space, but it's more for everybody that's interested in podcasting, as opposed to like the top geeky nerds that normally, talk about that. But we're a guest on the show this week, and he was on about they do audio and video production for their clients to help it market the shows, etc.
Right.
But they rarely put full length videos up. They create
Yeah.
reels, they create TikToks, they create shorts, and that's what they put out because they find that nobody's really watching an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hour video. Unless you're Joe Rogan, maybe, but generally people aren't watching that length, or they might have it in the background, but they will watch these little shorts, these little
Right.
snippets of content. And if you start to build up a story with consecutive TikTok videos or consecutive reels, etc., and then you've got the big call to action or the big grab at the end of that, you can really create some really neat little like marketing angles there. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking at and seeing if it works for
Right.
you. And if you're going after a specific audience, again, it's marketing 101, right? You have to understand where that audience is and what the preference is to be marketed to or to be communicated with.
Right. We stumble. I've always been the one. It's funny. It's kind of funny in our organization, and I know Rebecca behind the scenes is probably chuckling right now when I say this, but it's the old guy in the office that seems to be the one that's willing to look at all this new stuff. So when TikTok came down, I started to play with it, started looking, and initially it was like, okay, this is. I don't see the business application for it. I don't see it as a marketing tool, and very quickly TikTok evolved.
Mhm.
And we had one of our clients, one of our big clients, and they asked us, what should we do? I said, look, use TikTok for business, but do it on a personal level. It's the same old story. Offer up something that's for nothing, like offer up with not being legal advice, but give good information that's useful information in little snippets. And they started doing it, and their engagement went like through the roof. So we've taken that on, and then I dabble with the AIs because I think if you don't, I know there's a lot of very diverse opinions about AI and that it's the evil sister that's coming to eat us all and spit us out. But I don't believe that. I think it's like anything. I mean, I'm concerned about deep fake. I think that's something that's real. I think it's
Mhm.
something that we all should be aware of. But talking about what you do. So like this show, for example, when it's done and finished and edited and everything's been done, um, it will it'll go out as a full however long the show is on our YouTube channels. But then we'll take Opus AI and we'll dump this in and it will give us up to, I think it's 30, but we'll just say for the sake of argument 20 um, shorts, YouTube shorts or TikToks or reels. And they're all graded by
Mhm.
percentage as to which one's going to give. So using a tool like that, the time saving alone is immense.
Yeah.
The learning curve that you don't have to learn how to edit is huge. You know what I could do, what we would have to do with that years gone by, would you be talking 4 or 5 days per episode to get that all done and cleaned up and ready to go and reviewed and checked and edited. Now it's 5 minutes. And that to
Yeah.
me is a huge difference. And that's where when I look at AI in a general sort of way, I dabble with a bunch of them and I keep, yes, we all come back, or at least I come back to Chat GPT because that's where it is. That's the open source. That's the good place to go. And it's somewhat monitored and watched. And then these other ones, I've watched different creators that I respect and kind of follow like you, what their advice is. And I'll go and, okay, well, let's see what this one's all about. How can it help me? How can it make my business better? But what do you think of AI in general, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, AI, it's here. So I think anybody that says, it's like the big, yeah, it can be used for, nefarious reasons. And like you say, the deep fake is one of the biggest concerns. I know in the voiceover industry, there's a big concern at the moment about their voices being used, outside of their work. And also there was a big case with, I think, OpenAI and Scarlett Johansson just
Yeah,
recently, where her voice was used without permission. So there's always going to be examples of that. But I think generally, companies that are making AI tools like Opus, like Video, which is one I use, it's similar to Opus, like Descript when it's coming to editing via text and all that, they're making creator lives easier. They're making business lives easier, and that's the whole reason for AI is to make your job and your job easier and save you time from creating the stuff you'd normally have to do manually. So I think used properly and being of the awareness that at the end of the day, if you still want your own humanness to come across, then
right.
you're going to tidy up what they present you. But that's a great starting point to get you ideas, to get you topics to talk about, to get you show notes, for example, descriptions that will help you attract audiences. So I'm a fan of it, and I see its value for sure.
Yeah, I like I say, I agree with you, and we do use it. We're expanding what we use. Descript, I know, is Rebecca's one of Rebecca's favorite AIs to use. We found that very early in the AI revolution, and she put it to use very quickly and in a very good way. Again, it's a big time saver, and that's the main thing. And the quality is there. I mean, I have to admit, when I first played with Opus and put one of our past shows in, I was absolutely blown away at what came out of it. And then all the explanation as to why this is 98%, and here's why, and here's what the notes it's going to hit, and you've got this great catch line, and it's like, holy crap, stuff that would take us hours and hours and hours to do. So
Exactly.
Danny, we're coming near the end of our time, and what I want to do, and you're gonna love me or hate me for it, I want to put you on the spot, and I want you to take a couple seconds and think about what would be your 3 top tips to new or, relatively new podcasters. What are the 3 biggies that you really think people should think about?
So the number one that I always recommend, because you mentioned it earlier about my equipment list, I've got it in my show notes. People always ask about, should I get this top of the range mic? Should I get this top of the range audio interface? It's like, no, no. First thing you do, look at your recording environment. What's that like? Is it lots of windows, bare walls, hardwood floors, lots of hard surfaces? Because if it is, doesn't matter what equipment you're going to use, that sound is going to be impacted. So you're going to have lots of reverb and echo. So you can get great sound from a $50 microphone in a treated room, as opposed to a $500 microphone in a big open space with lots of hard surfaces. So if you're going to spend money, spend a lot of time looking at your recording environment and seeing how you can improve that. So it can be really cheap as well if you're not on camera. So I'm rarely on camera. So I mean, I've got my treatment behind me that looks kind of nice for camera, but everything else is just, it's acoustic panels. I've got a moving blanket just up here that's ugly. It's got a bunch of scrapes it and threads coming off, but it does the job, right? No one
Right.
sees it. So yeah, look at your environment and try treat that. The second one is learn editing. Doesn't have to be super great, but just tighten up your content. So if your show's an hour long, does it have to be an hour long, or can you take out a 10-minute rambling intro and make that a 1-minute intro? Now you're really tightening the content up and getting, because people's attention is finite. We know that, whether it's on video or audio. So for someone to give their attention to you, you need to make it worth their while and get to that right away. So appreciate editing and what that can do for you. And it doesn't have to be great. As you mentioned, you can use a tool like Descript, and that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So just look into editing. And probably the last one is mic technique. I mean, can I do 4? Sorry,
Sure.
I
Yeah.
just thought of
Please,
one there.
please.
So I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
say
yeah.
mic technique. I'm gonna stick with mic technique. I think that's super important, and I have got a video on YouTube that talks about this and gives you an example whether you use a condenser mic that we're using, or a dynamic mic that's more forgiving of your environment. But mic technique's key. That really makes the sound and helps your audience, appreciate the content better. The fourth one is marketing. Be aware that you're going to have to market. This is not Kevin Costner's Field of Dreams. This is not, you're not going to stick a big sign out in the middle of a park saying free ice cream and 1,000 people come to get free ice cream. That's not going to work. It's a long-term thing. Don't expect to earn money if monetization is one of your goals. Don't expect to earn it out the gate. You can do that, but don't expect it. So just understand what it takes to grow a podcast. And that's maybe 20% creation, 80% marketing. So that'd probably be my 4 tips. I know you said 3. I apologize.
No, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. And those all 4 make perfect sense for anybody getting in or who's only been in for a short time, because the landscape changes so quickly in podcasting, as well as the marriage now of what we're doing is, we put our product out as an audio podcast as well as a video podcast. And as well as our YouTube channel and all the other stuff and this stuff we've already talked about. Danny, what can I say? Thank you so much. My guest today, everybody, has been, in case you missed it, it's Danny Brown. He's a podcaster extraordinaire in my book. And he's been in marketing, digital marketing forever and a day. And in the lower third, and there'll be in the description, all the contact information from Danny Brown. Should you need his services, should you just want to talk to him, podcaster, I'm sure you can email him through his platforms and he'd be happy to chat with you. So Danny, again, thanks again for coming out for us. It was very appreciated. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. And I'm always available if you want to have me.
I keep that in mind, mate. I've got a new podcast actually launching June 27, which is completely different from anything I've ever done. And I made a bit of research, and it's as far as I know, it's the only podcast that's doing this. So that should make it a nice little niche. So I will definitely reach out to you about that.
That'd be great. I'd love it. Thanks so much, Danny. Thanks again to Danny Brown. Thanks, everybody, for joining us in the show. Please take a couple moments to click that like box, subscribe, so you can get notices of our next shows, our upcoming shows. It's been a pleasure. Once again, thanks to Danny Brown. Thanks to Rebecca Levine in the background, keeping everything together. Everybody have a great day and an awesome week. Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the LegalTube podcast. Ready to take your legal marketing to the next level? Our show delivers expert insights and practical advice to help you succeed in today's competitive legal landscape. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. For more information, check out LegalTube.ca. And if you have any questions, get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.